You're listening to Co-Parenting with Grace, the podcast for families raising kids across two homes. I'm your host, Jody Grace, wife, bonus mom, professional peacekeeper, and your teammate in this beautiful work of co-parenting. So put that red lipstick on, Grace family, and let's get into it. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Co-Parenting with Grace. Today's episode is just a little different, and I believe it is very special and very important. I am sitting here with someone who has been a huge part of my family's story, even before I entered the picture. Today, I'm talking with my children's biological mom, my co-parent, Kelly Rush. Our journey hasn't always been easy, but I do believe it is one worth sharing. In this first part of our conversation, we're looking back at where it all started, the tensions, the misunderstandings, and the messy middle. My hope is that by opening up about our hardest chapters and addressing some wounds that aren't quite healed yet, you will see that even the most complex co-parenting relationships can find their way forward. Welcome, Kelly. Are you ready for this?
I'm so ready for this. I've been anxiously waiting for my episode to roll around. So I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I appreciate you so much for being brave enough to sit down with me today. I think that while this might be not necessarily a tough conversation, but an important one, a deep one, I think it's so important for other co-mothers to hear and to witness our vulnerability, our honesty, and our authenticity.
Yes, this portion of our story is important to lay some context and some background as to how we got here today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, we have had many conversations getting ready for today, some of those pretty uncomfortable. But we have laughed, we have cried, and most importantly, we have found our way through the weeds and have learned who we are as women outside of sharing children. So, if you don't mind, will you give our listeners a little backstory before I entered the picture? You share children with your ex-husband, to whom you were married to for over a decade. With whatever you're comfortable with, share with us about your co-parenting your older girls with your ex-husband.
Yes, and just to kind of give you a little bit of background about myself as well. I'm a mom to 4 great kids ranging in ages of 23, 22, and the twins who are 6. I am a Libra. I love astrology and anything spiritual, whimsical, or metaphysical. I would like to say that I am a recovering anxious attacher, self-sabotager, and people pleaser.
I relate.
Yeah, and it's really important to know, like, I have been on a spiritual journey the past 2 years, a very eat, pray, love-esque type of experience, which I think is monumental to where we are today, and puts a lot of perspective on the way that I view my past and wounds. And so, with that, my story starts very young. I was married at 20 years old. I moved out of my parents' house straight into married life. That included moving out of state and really out from under the parental guidance of my own mother, who was scheduling those very important female appointments at the time. And so with that, me and my ex-husband found ourselves starting a family very early. I gave birth to our oldest daughter when I was 21, and then our youngest daughter when I was 22. We were married for 12 years, and my oldest daughter was, I believe, about 9 years old, and my youngest was I think just turned 8 when their dad and I divorced. The ending of that relationship was abrupt and traumatic. I had just turned 32. I had never been on my own, and so I didn't know how to be alone, let alone co-parent. And like you had said in a previous episode, co-parent wasn't even a buzzword back then.
It wasn't even a thing.
It wasn't even a thing. And
shared custody, divorce,
Yeah, separate.
Yeah.
Just very separate. And I didn't know what that meant or what that looked like. The realization in a span of 24 hours that I was going to be unmarried, the sole provider and the sole protector of not only 2 young girls, but to myself, didn't feel liberating.
No.
It felt earth-shattering. And recovering and healing took many years.
Right.
And those years were complicated by a man and father who also didn't know how to co-parent.
Right.
In the wake of what felt like unfathomable pain. We were both new to this.
Right.
And so unfortunately we didn't co-parent.
Yeah.
We survived.
Yeah.
What felt like survival.
You didn't have the tools.
I didn't have the tools. And so that felt like something that I was alone in. I felt like I carried a lot of weight.
Sure.
And so that's kind of where my co-parenting history began.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I'm sure with that experience, you learned a lot. Like you say, if nothing more, then you know what you didn't want moving forward.
True.
So what did you learn in that dynamic that shaped how you approached parenting the twins?
It at least gave me experience of just parenting. Things that felt overwhelming didn't feel as overwhelming this time around. And it also, I knew that you learn as you go. No 2 kids are the same. And so that my experience before wasn't necessarily my experience now.
Sure.
But those fundamental things of, making sure that your child is fed or safe and like all of those things didn't feel new.
Right.
And so I felt more secure in my ability to do that alone.
And to survive.
Versus when it was in the heat of never having done that before.
Right. And while carrying grief, pain, of a divorce. So, you and the boy's dad, my now husband, had a short, long distance relationship before your pregnancy. So talk to me a bit about how things shifted when you realized that you would be parenting together long term.
Yeah. So I think the key word there is short.
Yeah.
The beginning, middle, and end of the relationship was very short, but the aftermath is vast.
Right.
And again, we were thrust into survival mode. There was no safety net, no life vest, no rescue boat in sight. And, instead of collaborating, we were kind of left with the magnitude of these waves.
Sure.
Waves of emotion, waves of perception, waves of grief. And for us, we allowed those waves to carry us further and further apart,
Yeah.
Leaving us alone in this vast ocean.
Sure.
With a decision, an individual decision to sink or swim.
Right.
And to this day, I would say that we continue to navigate our own waters individually.
Yeah. Yeah. It's still a process of growth. It's still a journey that is still molding and shaping and changing and capable of more growth.
Oh, absolutely.
And change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The important thing is that we're here and we're working on it, and that's there is a path forward.
There's a path forward.
Yes.
And what we have is not what we have is very workable.
Right.
And so there is a lot of good points
Yeah.
to this as well.
Sure.
And I love that you and I get to talk about what we bring to the table
Yeah.
as co-parents,
Mm-hmm.
and how this really is, like you say, a group effort.
Yeah.
And you don't have to just be in the waters by yourself.
No. Yeah.
And even if it's not necessarily the other biological parent, that other support person could be very vital
Absolutely.
to your survival.
For sure. I know when I stepped into this dynamic, you use the ocean as a metaphor, and you were both in your own dinghies with your own paddles, your own, and I felt like I was and wanted to be the girl with the bungee cords who was trying to hold the dinghies, together, apart still, maybe, you might still be in your own dinghies, but I want to be, and definitely, in the beginning saw that I could hopefully, be a person that can hold these dinghies together.
Hold the dinghy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we had a paddle, but
I came with one in hand.
You did you definitely came with some paddles. That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, with that, as I entered the picture, what were your first thoughts when you met me and when I started dating the boy's dad?
Yeah. So I was relieved, actually. This is kind of a funny story you and I have talked about many times. Is the first time I met you was at a t-ball game.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure if I knew you were coming,
I doubt
if
it.
I had been privileged that information, but in walks Jody, and if you can imagine her bright red lipstick, blonde hair, she was adorable as can be. She has a great fashion sense. So,
Thank you.
yeah, so I was relieved.
Yeah.
And, to be 100% truthful, I was relieved because you represented the possibility of peace
Yeah.
for me in what had not always been,
Sure.
a peaceful situation between me and the twins' dad.
Yeah.
So I clung to that.
Sure.
You
was a hope.
you became the life vest, the life ring that was to be thrown.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm glad that was your experience, because I showed up and I was scared to death.
Yeah, let's hear about that.
Yeah. So, I had some fears when the boy's dad and I got more serious, and I knew I would have to meet the boy's mom at some point and potentially raise children with you because, my husband had said early on, I will not introduce my children to anyone except the woman I intend to marry. And so I knew once I had met them that this was the path. It was going to be me and you and him forever raising these kids. And so, and I feared many things. It was such unknown territory for me. I had never dated a man with children before, not seriously like this anyway. And I learned really quickly about some insecurities that I didn't expect to have. Um, jealousy wasn't something that I had experienced maybe since high school. It wasn't I thought, oh, I'm not a jealous person until I was presented with these insecurities. I had these worries that you would come between me and the boy's dad, and then in turn come and take the boys from me, and or poison the boys against me, because the experience that I had had with friends who had co-parents or had a biological mother in their life or a stepmother in their life, it was rarely peaceful. It was usually, well, one of us is the villain and one of us is the hero, the princess, and so that was my only understanding of what a co-parent relationship looked like. Of course, all of those fears were not based on fact or truth in our situation. But that's what our mind does, at least mine. And we'll talk to that more. But my mind goes into this protective mode, right? I'm always looking for worst case scenario. So if I assume the worst and hope for the best, then I'm not surprised. So, and with that came some feelings and fears of competition. So were there fears for you and feelings of competition when, we finally joined paths, or what do you say?
Yeah. So initially I didn't have the competitive feel until you were invited into decision making.
Right.
We had created a group chat, and you were very active in the group chat. And so when there were times that a decision needed to be made, when you started to chime in on those decisions, that's when I feel like there might have been more competitive feeling in there. And it's just because we were navigating new territory.
Right.
I had no experience of being a co-parent, even though I had been married before, and my ex-husband had remarried. I don't share a co-parenting relationship with either of them. I have very few times where I've even talked to that woman. Even now, my children are grown. And so I didn't have experience in what another outside person's perspective or collaboration was. And so I had to learn what that meant, what roles were. And so that was a really interesting time in our relationship. And so I think that those competitive type tendencies, now we were never extreme with that, but you could feel that, the encroachment of the toes, like, am I going to step on your toes or not? And I was sitting in a place where your relationship was a buffer for my relationship between me and their father. And so I felt like I had to tread very lightly, especially in your favor at that point, to not rock that boat. Sure. But we went into the defining of who are you?
Absolutely. And I think, I did definitely step in and make my voice heard fairly early on when we came together in that joint message. And I'm sure I came on strong. I mean, I can tend to do that. But I know I did it in the beginning because I knew the communication that you and my husband had had up to that point wasn't always peaceful, wasn't, if it was good, then it was just business, and I felt this need. I'm a fixer. right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the Libra in us. But I felt this need to step in and be a peacekeeper myself, make sure that if I was the one answering you, then I knew what kind of answer you were going to get, and also I am admittedly struggle with control. And there was a piece of me that thought, well, if I'm the buffer, then I can control the closeness she has with my husband. He wasn't my husband at the time. Things were still, relatively new. I mean, we'd been together for about a year, maybe, I think, by the time I met you, and just over a year. And so, gosh, I still had insecurities in my relationship, much less having to marry these worlds and have you step in as his ex and the children, So I definitely felt a need to compete, not even just with you. I felt in those early days a need to compete with my husband, with the boy's dad, for affection, for FaceTime, for, how could I ever be able to offer anything that they needed? They had a mom and they had a dad, and I had no idea how I fit into that picture. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to earn their love through my actions. All of you, I felt that with all of you. And that's what I had always done from childhood. And I just thought that love was to be earned by what you had to offer someone. Yes. And, being loved for just being myself was a novel concept, and I needed to be needed. So I looked for ways to be needed. And I think that's why again, how we are shaped, how our experiences shape us is how we show up. And that's how I showed up.
Right.
In that
and
moment.
That is such a common wound in people, is that feeling of inadequacy and having to earn your worthiness.
Right.
And it's a lie.
Oh, absolutely it is. But yeah, I would wager that most people struggle with that to some extent, especially women. Yeah. We are, I feel like that we come out of the womb and there's a measuring stick right there, and we are all expected to measure up. Exactly. How do we measure up against each other? How do we measure up against the Kardashians of the world? How do we measure up against, the girl that's in the position that we want at work? There's just always some way that we're expected to measure up. And that's just, like you said, it's a lie.
Yeah.
It's not necessary. So, in those early days and months of knowing me, how do you think you viewed my role in the boys' lives, and how has that, or did that evolve?
Yeah. So I have this ultimate feeling of gratitude for you. Mm-hmm. That started very early on. And I would say that was a foundation that I felt, even with the anxiety and the unknowns. There was always this undertone of gratitude for your presence. Again, I think that was because we were creating the roles of buffer, defender, and, pursuer.
Sure.
So, and it took us a while to navigate away from those roles. But if we're talking about that particular time, that was what we were in.
That was our dance.
And so there's this, specific story of where we had to define roles about, like pickup and things, and going back to daycare.
Right. Yeah. I remember when, one of the boys was going to one daycare. He had gotten in through, a program that he was in as an infant, an
IEP through the school district.
Yes. And the other one did not have one. And so there wasn't room for him in the school, but there was for one because of this IEP he had. So you and the boy's dad had, before I entered the picture, or before I was privy to the decision making anyway, had decided that this specific daycare was, had a specific accreditation or a specific learning platform that was equivalent to the preschool that the other was going to. And that became a concern for us as the one who was in daycare's behavior started to shift a bit. And I remember in those days being like, well, if it was the ride, if it was that, the bus wouldn't pick him up, I would have taken him, and I remember you had shot back a text and it's like, well, we didn't know what your role was at that point. And, God, I remember being like, but I knew what my role was at that point, So it was just figuring out what those roles were, what they looked like. And, I love my husband, not a natural communicator in some ways. And while he and I knew what my role was and what my role was going to be moving forward, again, that wasn't something you were privy to at that point. So it was something that we had to figure out as we went. And because of that, there were hurt feelings in the process on both sides. I felt like, what am I, chopped liver? I couldn't take him. And you felt like, well, you weren't even here. You weren't even part, this was a decision that didn't involve you. Why are you, why are you calling me on this now? It's not, so it took those hurt feelings though to get to where we are. And while we can, look back and say, gosh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. But we learned about each other through those uncomfortable situations.
Well, it forced us to divvy up the roles for sure. And I think that actually was the catapult for the group chat.
Yeah.
I think you were done having the game of telephone.
For sure.
Asking
what did she say?
The boy's dad.
Yeah.
What did she say? Because obviously probably you only received a fraction.
Well, sure. Yeah, with any man.
And same for me too. So there came the development of the group chat, and roles were defined at that point, and how you process that roles is where we now get into the messy bit of learning who each other is. And at that point, it wasn't on a personal level.
No.
It was strictly surface level of, like you described, very business level relationship, arm's length.
Very parallel.
Very parallel.
Yeah. You stay over there, I stay over here, and, we'll try not to hurt each other's feelings. It was just basically that, like, we have to communicate. We have to talk about, what's going on here, but let's just keep it surface, because again, we didn't know each other. All we knew to base our opinions on were what we knew. I knew of your past with my husband. I knew you only knew me as this girl who just stepped into the picture.
Right.
You didn't know that I'd been there for a year. Those were things that we each had to work through and work on. So I think I know the answer to this, but tell me about some of the moments where you felt judged or excluded or misunderstood.
So, yes, I have felt all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those particular wounds of judgment, like I said, inadequacy or being misunderstood, looking back now, were our biggest barriers.
Sure.
And they were also my deepest wounds. And they weren't just showing up in my relationship with you. They were showing up in all of my relationships.
Right.
Which was really, it was just knocking on the door saying, address me.
Right.
And so, I feel like in those very early days, I lived in a constant state of defense.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I lived by disclose or defend. I was either over-explaining myself so that you could understand, or I was defending myself
Sure.
to, keep some sort of like, I am a relevant contributor to this dynamic.
Right.
And so that was really kind of hard for me, going back to that original, kind of confession, that how you felt was really important to me because you were the buffer.
Right.
And so I really sometimes felt like I gave up opportunity to say what I needed to say out of, not only respect for you or your experience as a mom, but out of fear of losing my buffer.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, definitely those feelings were there. And feeling like, where you felt like you could do something better, or, and I think something that's interesting is that I had a little like, you are vocal, and gosh, I wished sometimes I could be more like that, like
It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, but there would be some really, quip little comments in there, and I would think to myself, gosh dang it, if I could just be like that, then, this could be completely different.
It's not always something to strive for.
But, yeah, we can laugh at it now, though.
Yes, for sure. Thank goodness.
But, yeah, so even though we were kind of in these, the midst of these struggles, just know that there were times when I was like, if I could just be more like Jody. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I do know that, yes, I can sometimes have a quick tongue and
fast fingers.
Fast finger. My husband calls me thumbs because he'll say, you fire off like 4 text messages before I haven't even have time to stop reading the first one. So
that's right. Jody has a talent of being able to answer the question before you even get it sent to her.
Yes, absolutely. Big Stone Soap Company makes small batch, handcrafted soap with a whole lot of soul. These all-natural scents tell a story and feel like a return to roots. My personal favorite, shake it, sugary. Deadhead, of course. Use promo code GRACE at bigstonesoapco.com. That's BIGSTONESOAPCO.com for a special discount just for our Co-Parenting with Grace listeners. And I think that I have, of course, worked through this in therapy, but I think that I have this quick need to respond. And I don't know, it's my cell phone that has done that to me. It's my being readily available to my clients, to my parents, to my sister, to my friends. So I feel this pressure when I hear my phone buzz. I feel like, oh my God, somebody needs me. I got to pick it up. I got to respond now. And again, I think you guys will see there's a theme with me, and I do have some obsessive compulsive tendencies. It's not something I've ever been diagnosed with, but there are things that I recognize in myself that, and that is one of them. I feel this need to, phone went off. Oh, I got to respond right now. As we sit here, my phone's on do not disturb, and it's giving me anxiety thinking there could be somebody trying to get a hold of me right now and I'm not responding. So it's, never in an effort to offend or step over, like I said, in an earlier episode, I think I talked about how sometimes I had to stop and think, are you bulldozing over a boundary that she hasn't even gotten to speak out loud yet? And it's definitely never been intentional. It's not a strength of mine. It's something that I have to constantly be aware of and work on. So, about the being misunderstood, that's something that I know you and I have talked about at length, and we both felt this need to be understood and over explain. And again, that's still something that I struggle with. If I feel misunderstood, I lose sleep over it. Mm-hmm. It's an effort to know I have to make them understand me. And it's something I've worked so hard on because it can be debilitating. It can really get in the way of peace and it forces that narrative of control. So yes, Lord, I'm working on it.
Because if you can explain yourself and you can anticipate their understanding of it, then you won't feel anxious.
Right. Yeah. It's that, as we talked about in that episode with Dr. Ashley Smith, that constantly scanning the room for, anything that could, say danger, mm-hmm. be prepared for it, then if I'm prepared for it, I'm not surprised by it. Right. I'm not hurt by it. So those kind of go hand in hand. But let's talk about, some of the harder seasons. Was there a turning point for you? Something that I did or didn't do that made things feel harder for you? I know you've explained a couple of, scenarios around this, and I'd like you to, talk to our listeners about that.
Sure. So we talk about seasons, and as we get more into our episodes and we unravel who we are today versus who we were, mm-hmm. 3 to 4 years ago, two significant points in my life are before you mm-hmm. and before me.
Yeah.
Meaning before who I became today, which spans the entire time. But then there's also this segment of time of existence before you, sure. Came into our lives. And the biggest takeaway was that the common denominator was me. Yeah. And that any sort of change had to start within myself before I could meet any change with anyone else. And again, I take that back to this wasn't my solitary struggle right. in life. This was manifesting itself in multiple areas.
Right.
And the common denominator was me. You had asked, was there anything you did or didn't do that made things harder? And I really do have to take that back to myself because, yes, I can name a laundry list of things that are very common for, women who are in a co-parenting relationship with another woman mm-hmm. of, you stepped on my toes, sure. They don't like to eat this or they do right. like to eat this and just those common little things there, but it was much deeper than that.
Right.
And I'm a very sensitive person, especially to other people, very empathetic, and I knew that this was your one and only shot at motherhood. Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned in your very first episode, which really just tugged on my heart, was that these aren't just your stepkids, they're your only kids. Mm-hmm. And that was something that resonated with me very early on in our relationship. And so what made it hard for me was that I had this intense desire to allow you to have your own experience.
Right.
You be the mother that you wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And I think where it got difficult was that you being a first-time mom, the things that you were experiencing often sometimes had you reaching behind for me right. to come with you.
Sure.
Hey, I think it's better if we do it this way.
Right.
And so I think our feelings kind of got mashed up, or our perspectives got mashed up as being like very singular. we have to do it this way at both houses or else.
Right.
Or else we run the risk of like ruining these human beings.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, and I struggled with speaking up and saying, hey, you know what? From my experience,
right,
you know, this isn't going to be fatal.
Right.
And so I was leaning heavily into your experience at the expense of my own.
Sure.
And so really what felt like, you know, what I was interpreting as you doing things was really just me.
Right.
Not facing the fear of, you know, what that was, if I brought this to you, what
Right.
that could, how that would affect us.
Right. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It was a fear that, it was a fear
It was
that
run,
drove those. Yeah, absolutely. And I know you'd mentioned that, you know, we have a shared app with the school, and messages would come in, especially in that heightened season when we were really working through. One of the boys was diagnosed with oppositional defiance disorder, and the school was in contact quite a bit during that time. And you were sitting on your couch, and a message, you know, came through from the school, and I responded before you could even, Thumbs responded before
I could. And that was the breaking point for me. That was not that long ago, within the past year. And mind you, I had mentioned at the beginning of the episode that I was on this journey of finding myself. And so I had been researching and, you know, viewing content about inner wounds. And I was, you know, I had a stack of books that I wanted to read. And luckily, in this particular moment, this story of the teacher reaching out, our son was in crisis at this moment, and this text came through explaining that he is in crisis and what do we do. And I am in the middle of putting together an action plan for this teacher. And you know, the ding, and Jody Grace's name pops up and has beat me to the punch. And I came unhinged. Within myself.
Right.
I think I might have even tossed the phone across the room. Why can't you let me be their mom?
Right.
Why can't you just think of me? I think of you all the time. Why can't you? It's like I felt like I give and you take and you take. And I ended up in this spiral of feelings. And then it dawned on me, I have lost sight of my son being in crisis. The entire message was to inform us that our son was in a state and that he needed help. And I was so focused then on you, what you could do to make me not in crisis. I am now in crisis, and you, Jody, need to fix it. Stop texting. Let me be the mom. Let me be the thing. And I was so far removed from the original thing that it blew my mind. And there was a book that I had ordered. It was called The Inner Work. It's by Ashley Cottrell and Matthew Micheletti. I think I'm saying that correct. And I picked that book up and I started reading it. And it talks about, and it'll give you a disclaimer actually in the beginning of the book that, you know, don't start this book unless you have ample time and are ready to face yourself. And that I think that was leading into your weekend with them. And so I did not leave the sofa. I read that book from cover to cover and bawled my eyes out and realized that I am the key.
Yeah.
I am the key to all of my pain. I am the key to my perception. I am the key to the lens in which I view any and all relationships.
Right.
And that was the turning point for me. And that is probably where you start to see me go into less communication in the group chat, because I had to spend time practicing what I was learning.
Yeah.
And so, that was a huge moment,
I think,
from us.
Yes, it was. And I think that that's when you really started to look at, what are my boundaries? Because, you say that you would give and I would take and take. And at that point, I didn't have any clue that you didn't want me to respond that way, because I from the beginning, from day, once I joined in with daycare, I was on those messages and would respond the same way. So here I am, just rocking along, think I'm just doing what the norm is, and having no idea that I'm triggering you in that way,
Oh, for sure.
And it was because of your need to stay small in an effort to not upset me, when, Lord, it wouldn't have upset me. And now we know, right? But
now we know hindsight.
We do make decisions with the information we have at that time, and we didn't know each other. You didn't know how I would respond. And like you said, you feared it. You feared that it would push me away, or it would, and I, here I just am like, I'm just part of this team. I'm just, just trying to help. And that brings me to a story. My, sister has spoken about this one in depth. It came from, I believe it was Glennon Doyle, author of the book Untamed. And she talks about being in a food court at the mall. I think she was sitting down with her kids and feeding them a Happy Meal. And she looks over, and there's this woman next to her, spoon feeding her child from a whole avocado, from a cut avocado. And she says, I felt like she was feeding him this avocado at me. Like, I was being judged for my kid sitting here having a Happy Meal. And here she was going above and beyond, feeding her, kid this whole avocado. And, she had to stop and say, this is not about this woman or the avocado. What is this bringing up in me, about me, that I need to face? What is this? What do I need to work on in saying to myself? I need to tell myself that I am enough. I am doing enough. And no matter what the other party does, my worth, my, what's the word I'm looking for? My strength as a mother, my wholeness,
your
as
validity,
a mother, your validity as a mother is not based on what someone else is doing in that relationship. So I know that's tough. And these are big adult emotions, and you have to be like Kelly and myself, where we have been willing to do the inner work. We have been willing to sit here right now and have a conversation that's uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable for me to hear, and it's probably uncomfortable for you to say, and had we had this conversation a year ago, it wouldn't have gone this way.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
We were still operating from fear, from wound. And that perspective is make or break your relationships. But it is practice. We've talked about how we practice every single day, showing up as these different versions of ourselves. Right. Not necessarily, people toss around the world healed.
Yeah.
But it's really just practice. It's practicing healing
right.
those particular things,
Yeah.
those particular wounds, with your sister's story about what she was feeling was a wound of inadequacy.
Exactly.
And the only thing that you can do is rewrite the narrative.
Right.
And that was something that I started actually doing. I mean, I had a journal and I would write down, I am adequate despite the belief that I am not.
Yeah.
I am adequate. I am an adequate mother if my child eats chicken nuggets.
Absolutely.
I am an adequate mother if, whatever those things are.
Yeah.
There some of the content that a speaker had said, a belief is only a belief if you believe part of it to be true.
Right.
If I told you right now you were wearing purple lipstick, you wouldn't believe me because
Right.
Jody's wearing red. Everyone.
No.
Yeah.
Not me.
It wouldn't affect you because you
Mhm.
just know it's not true. But if
Yeah.
I said, wow, that color looks hideous on you,
Yeah.
a part of you might be like, does it?
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because there is some insecurity in you. It's not even about the lipstick at this point. I have drawn out an insecurity of not being good enough.
Yeah. You have fed a belief that I
A
already
belief
have
that you
in
already
myself.
have.
Mhm.
So in this case with that avocado, it was, she had to challenge a narrative that
Yeah.
was in there long before that lady was
Long
feeding
before
her.
avocado lady.
Long before
Yeah.
avocados, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, this just leads us into a little more of a gritty question. Was there a time where you felt mad at me or a time where I felt mad at you? And what would we say about that now? Or, how have our feelings changed since those reactions, those knee-jerk reactions?
Yeah, so I would think that it's really hard for me to think of a specific time when I was mad at you. I would say I was mad at you about that text thread.
Yeah.
But I think what I've more so maybe hurt about is maybe shouldering some blame that may not be mine to carry. And so, so when we think about that, again, I just have to take it back to what is it that I am needing, what I'm thinking that I need you to fix in me.
Right.
And expecting your key to fit my lock. And, I've shared that analogy with you before of, I can take your key and shove it in my lock and try as hard as I can to unlock that feeling inside of me as if you are everything that can make me feel better. But all I do is I mash up my lock and I damage your key and still the lock never opens.
Right.
And so, that is the perspective now of when we have maybe a disagreement or going into it, I have to recognize, what do I feel and where is it coming from?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that's important, to recognize it as that. Recognize it as, is this my anger or is this about me? Is this about something in me? And most of the time, that's what it comes back to for all of us. It's about something that we need to look within first.
Exactly.
And decide, are they doing this to me, or is this bringing up something in me that I've already decided about myself that that's probably untrue?
So what is a story in your perspective?
Yeah. So, I remember being, at the time we've talked about when one of our kiddos was dealing with that newly diagnosed oppositional defiance disorder, and none of us knew how to handle that. We knew that this isn't our kid, right? And there were some, he had some meltdowns at school that we just were like, we're not seeing this at home. What is happening? And so it was such a emotionally heightened time. And you have a TikTok page, and you had been doing some TikTok videos, and one of them, and of course I checked them out, right?
Of course.
I did. And one of them you had posted with said son, and it was about who's more difficult, me or you. And it was a voice clip. It wasn't your voices. It was, and is there anybody more difficult than you? And he points at you and he says, yeah, you. And I remember just being so set off in that moment, because again, the worrier that I am, and which I don't know, am I a type A personality? Somebody that, cause I've never been that in my life until I became a mother figure, if you know that.
Well, Ashley says it's all anxiety.
That's it. And, that's probably what it was. It was my anxiety driving the bus for how that might affect him in that moment. Like hearing, somebody say that he was difficult, or, I was just thought of all of the things, all of the bad that video could bring about. And I remember, firing off a text message, and I'm certain I didn't handle it the way that I would today. But again, emotions were so heightened during that season, and I was still feeling threatened by you, fighting my own insecurities and trying anything to, not necessarily like hang on to any control I had, but to be a voice for our son. And that may be strange for you to hear, another woman say, but like you said, I don't know any other children. I love these kids. They are mine. You birthed them, and I get to love them. And I love big. I love hard. I don't know any other way. And so I feel like a mom, but I feel like a mom who has zero control over what decisions are being made for her children, even though, you say that I, definitely get, and I do get in on the decisions, but, I can't, tell you, hey, take that down. That's my son, and, so I think I was driven by that frustration that, if he were my son, I wouldn't do that, but he's not. He is my son, but he's not my son. And I can't tell her she can't do that. But, so yeah, I think I probably knee-jerk sent you a text message, and while it may not have been constructed in the way I would today, I think the message was there, and I think you understood it, and I know now there was definitely zero malice in the, that was something fun that you guys did together, and you enjoyed, the boys enjoyed, and the timing was just off, and
it was triggering a wound inside of you.
100%.
And again, it's that locking key. Mm-hmm. You were searching for my key to fix it.
Yeah.
And hindsight is so big now, Oof. Right? We look back at these things and we can actually laugh at these stories, which is absolutely great. But yeah, in those moments where we feel those are, we, say like, oh, it's in the best interest of this, but really what we're feeling inside, you talked about, Ashley, about this of, physical feeling of, in that moment when you watch that, your interpretation of that was this. And I bet you had a very physical feeling happening, just like I had in that moment of, that text thread.
Yes.
And needing something to come and remove that.
Right. Who can fix this for me?
Who can fix this for me?
She can take this pain away from me by not doing it, And it's like, no, because it's not about that. It's about something in me that I have to recognize, and I have to be the one to, like you say, put my own key in my own lock. I am responsible for that. Nobody else is responsible for that.
And when you're in a co-parenting dynamic, boy, do we knock those locks
Oh, man.
just all the time. I mean,
Absolutely.
to no fault of our own. It's just,
Right.
we are human beings. We have these tendencies, and we do have genetic makeup and,
Sure.
how we were raised and things like that. So, our locks still,
Yeah.
clatter every now and
Absolutely.
then.
And there's also a cultural pressure, or a cultural, what's the word I'm looking for again? I don't know. But there's this presence that tells us, or society that tells us, they're doing that to you.
Oh, yeah.
This is the way that it should be. This is the way that it is, and you're just going to have to deal with it. She's going to overstep boundaries, and she's going to do shit you don't like on purpose, just out of
Right.
spite, because that happens so often. But you can't lean into that belief. I think a lot of high conflict relationships are high conflict because, I'm talking co-parenting relationships, because people lean into that belief that for sure they're doing this to just piss me off. For sure they're doing this just to hurt my feelings. And it's like, no, it's not about you most of the time. So if you can look within and say, what is this bringing up in me that has nothing to do with what is really happening? In my family, Mom, if you're listening, I'm sorry. In my family, my grandma and my mom one time had an argument about the shredded cheese at our family reunion. And we have this saying, and it's like, it's not about the cheese. The fight wasn't about the shredded cheese. It was about years of, frustration, or maybe other frustrations that led up to that moment. And I think that's what a lot of these conflicts are between co-parents. We nitpick little things and we fight about the little moments when it's not about that. It's not about the cheese.
Yeah.
It's about something far bigger, most of the times within ourselves. Yeah. So I know that, we've talked about, feeling like you have to defend yourself. But tell me, is there a time where you felt like you had to defend your place as their mom against me? And what did that feel like? What did that look like?
Yeah. Many times, you had mentioned in the first episode of how we started going to doctor's appointments, parent-teacher conferences, all of those types of things. And so, yeah, there's an undertone of making sure that people understood that I'm the mom.
Yeah.
You share their last name.
Right.
It makes sense that people would assume
Sure.
that you are the parent, you are the biological parent, and who's this person?
Right.
And so, yeah, little things like that were bothersome. I don't share their last name.
Right.
And so even just signing permission slips, I felt like I had to write mother next to it, or somebody would be like, who is this?
Right.
And so, yeah, I've definitely had those experiences where I felt like I had to explain who I am because the natural looking parent was you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And I know you and I have both talked about, I remember sending you a picture one time of one of the boys and said, I wanted you to see this picture because he looks like you here. He's got your jawline, and he's not the one that you typically hear that, about. And you said, well, my gosh, thank you for sending that to me, because sometimes I think he looks more like you than he does me. And, I thought, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. I never thought about how that might feel, and so, yeah, I can't imagine. I know what it feels like to love them as their bonus mom. And I can't imagine a love greater. And so I can't imagine, I can imagine. That's all I can do. I don't know what it would be like to be in your shoes and have to know that 50% of the time there's another woman that puts them to bed and says, I love you, and sings to them at night. that would kill me. It would. So I do my damnedest to be so respectful of your role as their mother, as does my husband, no matter what, tensions the two of you may have. That's something that is very important to him because he's a very loyal son himself and sees, the importance of that. But those are challenges that aren't discussed enough. Everyone knows they're there. And the more we can talk about it, the easier it becomes to share those children, to say, I'm thankful that they have a bonus mom that loves them that much. And I know when they go to bed at night, they're being told that you love them and they're being tucked in and they are being, it was one thing that my mother-in-law has, that was one thing that my mother-in-law has always said. She was divorced from her boy's dad, and they had a stepmother pretty young. And she said, I had always told her, no matter what you do, just make sure that they know they're loved when you tuck them in at night, just like I would. Please tuck them in and tell them you love them just like I would. And that has always driven, my relationship with the boys is, what would I do if I was their biological mother? And it's no less than what I do now. And I wouldn't do anything any differently. I would love just as deep and just as wide. And so, yeah, that's it's deep, and it's not a small thing to share that with another woman. We sit here and talk about it's why things are hard. It's why there's insecurities, because we both love the same little people so much. It's hard not to vie for their attention and their love, but they don't see it that way.
They don't see it that way. And I think, something that you and I are very passionate about, changing is that, are we conditioned to separate our roles?
Yeah.
Are we told that we can't care for each other? That, you look at even Hollywood or movies and the step-parent role and, this association with being a villain or vice versa. And the amount of content that's out there these days that isn't promoting cohesive collaboration or even getting to know each other. And that could be due to circumstances. There's multiple parties involved, and so you're not just dealing necessarily with two people. We do have a very unique situation, but just to bring light to maybe a misconception out there that it has to be a certain way.
Right.
And realizing that we were able to kind of bust through that stereotype of stepmother relationship and create what we wanted. We are the writers of our story.
Absolutely. And you and I talked earlier about I had said that I do my best to stay in my lane, and you'd said what does that even mean? Like you and I are driving down a 4-lane highway, and we're both moving the same direction. So you have to figure out for yourselves, each co-parent relationship, each co-mother dynamic, you have to figure out what staying in your own lane means. And for us, we've decided that, we're riding in the same car.
Yeah, we're now in the same car. Who's picking up who, and who's picking up Starbies?
Yeah, where are we going and what are we drinking? So yeah, it's about defining what that looks like for you and your family. There's no norm. This isn't, Cinderella, and there's no wicked stepmother. It's whatever you decide to make it. It can be as bad or as good as you make it. You have control over that. Well,
you have control of yourself.
Yourself, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have a co-parent that's willing. And I pray that for all of you, because life is too short to not live in peace when it's an option. So what do you think, this is a great segue here, what do you think has helped us begin to coexist with more peace, even when it wasn't perfect?
Self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked about being, during that time where we both kind of stepped back. We were in the midst of a high tense school year. There was just a lot going on, even just outside, not just us. We had outside relationships that were bleeding into what we were experiencing with each other. And there was this period of time earlier at the beginning of this year where we both stepped away.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed us time to do this inner work, start doing this self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And what we talk about now is that we had no idea what the other one was doing.
No.
We just somehow decided around the same time frame to do this thing for ourselves.
Right.
And go on this solitary, soul-searching journey.
Mm-hmm.
And we started to show up in our lives as different people. And what was really great was that we ended up on the same path.
Yeah.
And
the page at the same time.
But we didn't have to recruit each other.
Right.
We didn't have to explain. There was no more over explaining.
Right.
It came together in a very organic way.
Yeah.
And so that one,
Definitely.
it blows my mind.
Yeah.
And
there was definitely that, kind of in between time where we didn't communicate as much, maybe like spring of this year, even winter into spring. And, we were both going through something personally, working on something personal, and surrendering, if you will. Surrender is scary, but we'd both come to this place where we knew we needed it to be successful. So, surrender showed up for me. It looked like compartmentalizing for the sake of sanity and for peace in my heart and my mind. And, those insecurities that I had were put to bed the longer that, my husband and I were together, and after we officially got married, and it became easier to not feel that threat. I knew where my place was in his life. I'd never doubted that, but that comfort and reassurance has come through time and connection and building on what we have. So it became easier for me to separate the you that had dated him and the you that's my boy's mom, that the woman I'm co-mothering with. And it changed the type of relationship that I wanted to have with you. And while the story didn't start how any of us thought it would, you and I have talked about how it couldn't have happened any other way for us to be where we are today. I wouldn't have met my husband had he not moved back from Colorado to be a dad. And had you not carried our boys, I wouldn't be able to share the children that we do. And that's my purpose, and I know that. And I think you and I have both talked about how we know that we are where we're supposed to be. It's, checking our own traumas and doing the inner work to learn that and be able to sit here today and say, yeah, this is exactly where we're supposed to be at the exact time. Timing is right. So looking back now, what was the first moment where you thought, maybe we don't have to stay stuck forever?
I think that moment came when I became aware that I don't have to stay stuck in here. Mm-hmm. And for the listeners out there, I am pointing to my heart, my soul. When I ascribed to the belief that if I show up as my best and trying self, it is more than possible, but even probable that I will align with your best and trying self.
Yes.
And here we are today.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. And I know, we've said it. You have to look inside. It starts with you. It starts with you and a willingness to bring peace to a co-parenting relationship that you have. And if you haven't made peace with yourself, if you haven't worked on the things that, you have referenced a mirror before, people being a mirror for you. And if you haven't looked in that mirror and worked on those things that are being reflected back at you, then this doesn't work. It doesn't work. And that's where blame and shame and guilt and anger still live. And
they drive the boat.
Absolutely, they do. Whether you want them to or not.
Right.
So you have to learn how to regulate, how to self-regulate and recognize those feelings for what they are and not allow them to dictate how you feel, your experience, your relationship that you choose to build. So if you have ever felt stuck in conflict with your co-parent, I hope that hearing the honest parts of our story gives you courage to keep going. Kelly and I are living proof that the story doesn't have to end in resentment. But this is only half of it. So next week, you will get to hear part 2 of this episode. We will dive deeper and talk about an unintentional, deep conversation that completely changed the trajectory of our co-parenting relationship. It wasn't planned, but it opened the door that neither of us knew was even there. So in part 2, we're going to give you the tea. Like I always say, hang in there, Grace family. You are doing better than you think. I'm Jody Grace.
And I'm Kelly Rush.
And this is Co-Parenting with Grace.